Hey guys, so I'm back here. I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience with the XPRO-2. So I haven't had the XPRO-2 for that long, and I haven't really had an opportunity to use it really heavily until just recently. And I just wanted to point out a lot of the common issues that the XPRO-2 does have, that a lot of photographers do have with it. And I do find them mostly to be true. So let me just go down the list here. I actually wrote them down so this video would be semi-structured. First one is diopter. And yes, the little diopter here that's on the side of the camera that lets you adjust the focus inside the viewfinder when using the optical viewfinder. Yeah, that does actually pose a little bit of a problem. I just found that when I was picking it up a lot and using it a lot, it would move. And I remember at one point I was taking some pictures. I was looking at the thing. I was like, "Why is it so blurry? Why is it so blurry?" It just wasn't dawning on me for like a minute. Then I realized, oh, crap! Like it didn't even cross my mind that the diopter would have moved. But it actually is kind of like, it sounds like it's pretty stable, but you know, when you're moving around and you're grabbing it, and it does tend to move. So I'm just cognizant of that now. So obviously it's a little bit of a minus, but once you know something is there, you check things accordingly. So the first thing would be the diopter. The second thing, which obviously is more of a physical constraint than anything, is what was that? I hate computers. Is when using larger lenses. So I have this 16 millimeter. When you put that onto the XPRO-2, you can't use the optical viewfinder anymore because it gets into your field of view. So, you know, anything I believe 23, 14, obviously the 27, the 14, I think are all can be used with the optical viewfinder. I'm not sure about the 14 actually, but anyways, just know that if your lens sticks out enough, you're not going to be able to use the optical viewfinder. So a little bit of a drawback, but you know, I kind of knew that going in. Not a big deal. You use the electronic viewfinder. ISO dial on the camera. I didn't really find that to be too much of a problem because, you know, you'd be like this, and once you get to learn the ergonomics of the camera, you just automatically just start pulling one of these. Yeah, I mean, you got to take your finger off the shutter button. So I guess if you were shooting in a more dynamic environment, a lot of the times this might be a pain to do, but I don't know. I knew it was there, and most of my shots are static anyways. I'm not shooting sports, or I'm not shooting changing scenery that much. Although on my vacation, the environment was dynamically changing pretty rapidly, and I did find myself doing that a lot. But once you know it's there, you kind of just adjust, boom, and you put it back. So that's that. And they didn't introduce, I thought that in the firmware update for the XPRO-2 that they were going to introduce being able to change ISO with the dial, but that did not happen. The fourth thing, and I think it's the last thing really that I wanted to point out in a video anyways, was the fact that it doesn't have an articulating screen. And I know this is an old school style design, rangefinder like, and you know, all the old school rangefinders didn't have the articulating screen, but I did find myself wanting it in certain situations where you're getting really low, because like for example, if you're in I was walking a trail that, you know, was kind of drizzling a little bit of rain and the ground was kind of muddy, and if it wasn't and it had grass, I probably would have gotten on my stomach and taken the picture. But because the ground was wet, and you know, that obviously would mean that I would get, you know, obviously that would mean that if I want to take that shot and get on the ground, I'm becoming a mess to do that. And also, you know, if there isn't grass, like if there was just dirt or dry dirt, I mean, you're getting really dirty to get that shot where, you know, you could have really just gotten tilt and then bang, like way down at like ankle height. So those are the four things that I noticed that were pointed out in a lot of other Fujifilm XPRO-2 videos, but I did experience it firsthand myself. A couple of drawbacks. I'm not calling them, you know, fails or anything, just drawbacks. When you're buying the XPRO-2, you know what you're getting. You're getting a rangefinder, a really well-built rangefinder with a lot of the traditional classic rangefinder look and feel and features in terms of ergonomics and things like that. So there you go. So one was the Diopter, two was the optical viewfinder and larger lenses, not being able to use it. Third was the ISO dial kind of being a little bit weird, but not too bad. And the fourth would be the lack of articulating screen. And I was going to say that I hope Fuji, makes improvements to the XPRO-2 in the next version. But honestly, to be honest, because I'm just sort of a hobbyist, I hope they don't. Because that means I'm probably going to want to buy a new camera. And I don't really like buying gear that much at all. A, because, well, obviously it's expensive. B, a lot of the upgrades that they do to cameras I find aren't really that big of a deal. And I might get trashed on YouTube for saying this, but again, I'm not a professional, so don't treat me like one. And I don't need incremental features like some of the pros do, like let's say 8 frames a second versus 10 frames a second. I don't really care. 10 frames a second versus 20 frames a second. I don't really care. 25 megapixel versus 20, I don't care. So a lot of these things, I'd rather just stick with the camera that I'm used to using, that I can get to know really well, rather than buying the next version of it with these little tiny incremental upgrades. Anyways, that's my opinion, and it's not that I don't like gear, but I just kind of like the gear that lets me do what I want to do. It's human nature, I guess, for something to have more than what you currently have, and you to inherently want it. But again, I don't need much. I like to keep it that way.